Satoshi Nakamoto is the deep state. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of people. John, you're going to own the deep end.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to tackle a very sensitive subject. It could well be our last show, Martin, because there's a lot of people, potentially up to 20% of Australians who have invested in cryptocurrencies. And we've had multiple requests. I know you've said you've had private requests. A number of people have raised the question of cryptocurrencies with me over the last few years. And we really haven't touched the subject. And so we're going to potentially attack the golden calf, so to speak, and talk about cryptocurrencies. And it's actually a very interesting time that we should be talking about cryptos, because a lot of Australians have jumped in, and the market, the crypto market as a whole, is down. I think only last year did the market capitalization reach about 3 trillion worldwide, and we're about half of that. So cryptos have gone down in a slide. A lot of investors have lost money, but there is, I think, a more deeper question about cryptocurrencies that I haven't really seen anyone on, at least in the Australian context, tackle. And I think today is a very important conversation to really open our viewers' minds up to what is cryptocurrencies, where did it come from, and is there a different story that everyone may have missed?
Yeah, and you mentioned the golden calf. I made a post about 2 years ago saying crypto is a religion. You either believe it or you don't.
Yes.
Right? And I got absolutely panned in my comments from people who actually are completely convinced that crypto is the future and it's not a religion, it's certainty, right? And in a way, that sort of proves the point that actually, by definition, a religion is something you believe, despite the evidence.
So there'll be a lot of our viewers who are going to basically say that I'm ignorant and ill-informed, and that there is much more to crypto. And to be honest, even the last fortnight, I've received private communications about cryptocurrencies, and people have said, I've spent hundreds of hours researching this. You don't know anything about this, John Adams, and you need to stick into your lane. But one of the things I would say, Martin, is in terms of a couple of reasons why I think people should be skeptical about cryptocurrencies. The first one is that just from an economic value point, it actually doesn't actually achieve what it says it was supposed to achieve. So initially this was supposed to be a store of value, an alternative form of money, digital gold, etc. Obviously the criticism of fiat currencies is that central banks create so much of it, it devalues, and you have inflation, and people lose in terms of their value. Now, the one point I'll make is that while Bitcoin has 21 million coins and it is somewhat limited, if you look at the cryptocurrency space, from one project, which was Bitcoin, we have now more than 10,000 out there. And so to my mind is cryptocurrencies as a sector is operating in a very similar way to fiat currency. So, but I mean, basically you just can create more and more altcoins, whether they have value or not. And rather than actually being a store of value, you're basically just creating more and more alternatives, which over time, as a sector, is losing its fundamental premise and value.
Well, there's 2 points. The first is that there's a lot of investment bankers who are now herding into crypto land, right? Partly because some of their clients want access to crypto, so the investment bankers are there. But secondly, they've created a whole series of derivatives. So you can actually take positions without actually holding a Bitcoin directly. And in fact, some of the most interesting developments have been the derivatives, but that's precisely the same thing that's happened in gold and silver and other asset classes too. So in a way, the concept that Bitcoin and blockchain is somehow completely discrete, different from the rest of the finance system is now not true. Because
yes.
In fact, a lot of the big players are the same players operating in other sectors too. And again, a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people still believe that somehow the crypto sector is, discrete, different, uncontrolled, blah, blah, blah. No. There are lots of big players, traditional players, who've now got their arms around the crypto sector too, and the derivatives are a huge part of it.
Yes. So concepts like stable coins and ETFs, options, futures, all of these things have now made their way into the crypto space. And while they are add-ons to the initial premise, I mean, the initial premise is starting to lose value. I mean, even Bitcoin itself, I mean, in terms of its volatility, in terms of some of the issues involved with it, I mean, there are advocates of the traditional monetary system who just says, even in the last week, Ben Bernanke, the former chairman of the US Federal Reserve, did an interview on CNBC and basically said that Bitcoin in itself, let alone the whole crypto sector, doesn't satisfy all of its initial claims. So that's probably one reason why people should be skeptical. The second reason is, now, when you're in the midst of a bubble, in a mania, the people in the herd can only believe that there's only one direction for where cryptocurrencies will go, and that is up. So a lot of people who think that the crypto sector is going down, but then it's going to rebound and it's going to recover and go up. Now, it may, but it may not. But I think when you're in the midst of a mania and you're just buying various cryptocurrencies because you see other people doing it and you're not actually doing a rational cost-benefit analysis, I mean, that's a very dangerous place to be in terms of being a retail investor. And then the third thing I think people should be skeptical about is that one thing that I value as a libertarian conservative, if I can call myself that, Martin, is having freedom and free will to live the life that I want. Well, what has cryptocurrencies led to? It's led to governments creating more laws, and more laws mean, so in theory, you are free to do whatever you want, unless if there's a law saying you can't do something. And so we now have governments legislating and creating entire regulatory frameworks around cryptocurrencies, whereas before, this was the alternative to the government. This was supposed to be our pathway to freedom and nirvana. But this whole journey in the crypto space has actually given an excuse for governments to take more power and create more regulation. And that, I think, is, on a net basis, harmful to society compared to where we were before cryptos came about.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And, the know your customer processes are required in Australia, for example, if you want to actually register with an exchange, is pretty rigorous, and it's been imposed by government. And, you can expect to see more controls. And as you say, now ASIC is now looking seriously at how to regulate the crypto sector. And of course, ASIC's concerned about the number of people who lost money.
Yes.
The scams, and there are a lot of scams in crypto, in the crypto universe. So there is a need from their perspective to intervene. But of course, as you say, that means that you're cutting across current freedoms. Where does it stop?
Precisely. And when you just said that, Martin, it leads into our next topic, which is in terms of the cashless society. Now, you and I in 2019 took on the Morrison government to defeat their proposed legislation to criminalise the use of cash, which was above $10,000, and we were successful in that effort. But here we are. So if we can just put this on the screen, Channel 9 actually had a story back in March of this year suggesting there's a report out there saying that Australia will evolve into the cashless society in basically 2.5 years by 2025. And there was a particular quote in there that I thought was relevant. It says, quote, "The report also predicted that within 2 years, digital wallets, such as apps that allow customers to use their smartphone or smart device to pay, will overtake credit and debit cards to become the leading e-commerce payment method by 2024. So what I think is, cryptocurrencies and this whole evolution of technology has facilitated the bringing about of the cashless society. Now, I'm not here to necessarily say, praise or criticize David Icke, but one thing I'll say about David Icke, and obviously he's a fellow countryman of like in terms of yourself, ever since the early 2000s, he has said there is a global agenda towards the cashless society, and I think it's quite dangerous that we are here, because obviously you and I vigorously argued the benefits of physical cash and the need for physical cash to remain part of the financial system, and it seems to me that even though we defeated Parliament from criminalising cash, there is still a movement towards the cashless society by banks, and the whole crypto genre has normalized some of these concepts around digital currencies that has I think made more people complacent and less people skeptical about what is the intention of the elite to take us towards the cashless society?
Well, that's right. And it's worth, I think, highlighting, John, that it isn't just crypto that's doing that, but banks obviously want to reduce costs, and frankly, handling real cash costs a lot of money. Whether it's an ATM or a branch, and moving the money around. So if they can avoid that, they can save money. Also, of course, if you actually have a digital transaction, it means it leaves a footprint. So you can actually, what people bought. And that means that you can actually then know more about their behaviors and habits. Now, as I said earlier on, that data is worth a lot. The banks actually use that for their own purposes, but you could argue that other organizations, and maybe even some financial organizations too, sell that data on and actually monetize it, because it gives them a profiling of you as an individual. So they don't get that with cash.
Yes, and obviously, when it comes to China, I mean, the more dangerous, extreme totalitarian evolution of this whole phenomena is in terms of having a social credit score. So basically, if you behave in a way that the government says they want you to behave, you can do what you want. Like, for example, buy a cup of coffee or go on public transport or visit a museum. But once you start to do things that the government doesn't want you to do, well, they actually have the technology in the platform to either freeze your account or to prevent you from transacting with in terms of certain people, and that's obviously a very particularly in terms of Australia in our history as a sort of liberal democracy, that sort of control by government is obviously very concerning. And I have to say, even in the context of the last 12 months, we had QR codes, which was promoted to the public as a measure to assist in health policy, and yet people who had nothing to do with health policy, such as various police departments across the country, use that data to track down certain people that they wanted, whereas we were promised this was only about health and nothing other than health. And we found out subsequently that Queensland and Western Australia in particular, broke that public promise and then used this data to do other things with it, which people did not give consent to.
Absolutely, and I'll just make the point quickly. We'll cover central bank digital currency another time in more detail. But if you are given a central bank digital currency account at the Reserve Bank, say, and they deliver that to your digital wallet, right? They can actually determine then what you can spend the money on, right? It's part of the whole process. So again, the digitalization and the linkage back to central bank digital currencies and to control and to surveillance, it's all a continuum. And I get very frustrated when people don't see how those dots can be joined.
Yes.
Now, will government join the dots, or will they prefer not to? Well, history tells you that if there's an opportunity to do more and surveil more and control more, governments have the tendency to go down that route.